Good morning. I I find myself I just went downstairs for a minute. I came back up here after telling Madeline where I was going to be. So I am going to go up and teach my Sunday school class right now. And she said, well, I want some cereal. I told her she'd have to wait, but if she happens to come in, well, you could almost expect her. I do find myself these days studying my Sunday school lessons before I study the sermon. Now, normally in the past, for years and years, I guess 50 or 60 years, I've been doing the sermon first. In fact, I haven't been teaching Sunday school all that long in retrospect. However, I know I've been doing it at least 5 years. I have 5 years of it on that telephone of mine. I was looking for the phone, but that's it. Taking my picture. So, 5 out of 60, well, that's not much, is it? This is the chit-chat part, so that I can finish my coffee before I get started. I will say, though, that since I've been doing the Sunday school lesson or the Bible study lesson first, sometimes it leads me to inquire a little further, and so it sometimes inspires the direction which my sermon takes, and today is not any different from that. The text seems simple enough. 4 words, thou shalt not kill. It's the 6th of the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not kill. Now, the Hebrew word here that is used for kill is this word, retzach. Now, who knows how it sounds if a person who really speaks Hebrew says it. R-E-T-Z-A-C-H, as we transliterate it into English. But the Hebrew word that is used here means murder. So the injunction means thou shalt not murder. Well, that seems simple enough, doesn't it? Moses is said to have murdered the Egyptian. Same word. I guess the first recorded murder was that of Abel by his brother Cain. Genesis 4:10. The Lord said, "What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground." I think the reason the story is there, the reason that we hear about Cain killing his brother, is not so that we will learn about what kind of sacrifice is better than other kinds of sacrifice. I don't think that's the point of the story. The point of the story, I believe, is to show how rapidly sin spread from Adam's moment of disobedience until this point at which we see a fratricidal murder, and then in ensuing chapters, a consuming selfishness that envelops the whole world and causes a do-over with Noah and his family. I think we would do well to realize and to remember that these Israelites who left Egypt and who stood there watching the smoke and the lightning on the mountain, and they stood trembling in fear while they watched it, and they said, "We'll talk to Moses, but please don't make us go talk to the Lord." These Israelites were a primitive people. Sometimes we treat the Old Testament as if it is describing people who are living now. Sometimes we treat these Old Testament injunctions as if they are injunctions for us in the same way that they were for these people who first received them. These people were not a polished civilization, even in terms of their day. They were not like the Egyptians. They weren't even a match for the more advanced civilizations of the Mesopotamians. The seven wonders of the ancient world weren't coming out of these Israelites. You understand? They've been captives for 400 years. They haven't been home. They haven't been to their promised land. Now they're going to go there. But goodness gracious, there were other civilizations that were more advanced than they. And the Code of Hammurabi was a law of that land, the Mesopotamians. It limited who could exact revenge through killing. It's called the lex talionis, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. And you see that described in Leviticus from 2 or 3 chapters, and 22nd, 23rd, 24th, I believe, chapters of Leviticus. Thou shalt not murder was actually a step beyond an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. No unjustified killing could take place at all. But what was justification for killing? That's always been a question, hasn't it? And matter of fact, in modern legal terms, there are many different levels at which people can be tried for killing. Maybe a killing is an accident. Maybe a person can be charged with homicide, but not be charged with murder. And often that is the case. Sometimes just an accident can cause a person to be put into prison and be punished. And the same thing was true back in those days. What was justification? These people were not advanced people, but they did know how to reason together. God wanted them to possess the land, this promised land, this land of Canaan. God wanted them to have that. He had promised it to them. He wanted them to go back there. And when they were too fearful to go in, God said, well, you can just wait until your children are ready to go in, because you won't go in. And so they wandered for 40 years. And finally there came that time when Joshua led them into the promised land. But to enter the promised land, to go in there, meant that they had to force other people out. Well, those folks probably not just going to say, okay, y'all take it. I know that we've been here for the last 400 years, but I believe your God promised you this, so we'll just move aside. That's not what they did, is it? No, they did not. So, what did Joshua do? Well, he fit the battle of Jericho. And Deborah led her armies to kill the armies of Sisera. And Jael just murdered Sisera. And Gideon, the weakest of the weakest, routed the Midianites. Samson killed thousands of Philistines. And it was a thing they did. They fought, they killed. And this is just the Judges up at this point. This is just getting through Judges, the dark ages of Israel's history. They had the commandments. But that doesn't mean they kept them, any more than it means we keep them. But the injunction to murder was a step forward in a civilized society. We take it for granted now. It was something special then. And what it said to these people was, we're not animals, we're not slaves. We have the power to reason. We can act morally. This is the moral law. I believe the moral law has been placed into the very core of our being from the beginning. I think that God puts it there in our hearts, in our minds, in our heads. And the reason I think so is that every civilization seems to have at least a basic understanding of right and wrong, and some may impress upon it in certain ways and some in other ways, but there is that sense that that people have, that this is right and this is wrong, and almost always you're going to find in every civilization you're going to find that they're pretty much the same. You look at the major religions, look at the atheists, look at the humanists, and you always are going to have this injunction: thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, you don't take what belongs to another, you don't spend your life greedily, you don't take another person's family away, another person's wife away. These are basic, and we understand these things. It does not mean that we keep these commandments, but we do understand it. But before the commandments were handed down, the law existed. The moral law existed. Cain knew that what he had done was wrong. There wasn't any question in his mind. He wasn't supposed to kill his brother. But when God said to him, "Where is your brother?" he said, "Am I my brother's keeper?" He didn't even fess up. I sometimes wonder why the atheists and the humanists raise a cry about the placement of the Decalogue in public spaces. I don't understand that. It's as if our laws are not based on them, and that those laws are not similar to the laws of the Hindus and of the Buddhists and of the Muslims, of the Jews, of the Christians, of everyone else, including the humanists. Well, our parallel passage this morning is from Samuel, 1 Samuel, 1 Samuel, if you will, 26, starting with verse 7. And this continues the story of David in a different light, in a different place. Stop for just a minute. I would do that if I were back in our classroom, which we will be soon, I trust. Now, here it is from the 26th chapter of 1 Samuel. And this begins with verse 7. By now, you've probably had an opportunity to look that up while I was sipping my coffee. And just in case you didn't get to it, I'll take another sip. I wish I could tell you which page it's on, but I can't remember that. I know this. 1 Samuel comes just before 2 Samuel. Here it is, starting with verse 7. So David and Abishai came to the people by night, and there Saul lay sleeping within the camp, with his spear stuck in the ground by his head. It's an interesting picture, isn't it? David is running from Saul. And the reason that he is running away from Saul is that Saul wants to kill him. Saul is completely consumed by jealousy of David, and has been since the day that David killed Goliath. It's an unreasonable envy, because David had not set him up as Saul's rival. So Saul chased him all over the land. Over hill, over dale. I'll tell you what, Saul had been after him. At one time, Saul came to a cave and went into the cave while his army was outside, and he went to sleep. Now, what he didn't know was that David and one of his advisors was already in the cave. They were hiding in the cave. Saul went to sleep there. He was all alone. David went up, he took the sword, Saul's own sword, and he cut off a little piece of the garment that was there. He had a chance, but he did not take the chance to kill his adversary who was chasing him. Now, here we come again. Saul lay sleeping within the camp, and David and Abishai went into the camp. Everyone was asleep. Abner and the people all around him. Abner is the personal guard of Saul, and they're all asleep. Abishai tells David, God has delivered your enemy into your hand this day. Now, therefore, please let me strike him at once with the spear right to the earth. Abishai was ready just to stick that spear all the way through Saul right into the ground. I'll not have to strike him a second time. But David said to Abishai, do not destroy him, for who can stretch out his hand against the Lord's anointed and be guiltless? David said furthermore, as the Lord lives, the Lord shall strike him, or his day shall come to die, or he shall go to battle and perish. The Lord forbid that I should stretch out my hand against the Lord's anointed. But please, now, take the spear and take the jug of water, and let's go. So he picked up the spear, and he took the jug of water that was there by Saul's head, and they went up into the mountain. And then they called back to let Saul know where they were, and he realized what they had done. Thou shalt not kill. David took that seriously at this point, and sometimes we wonder what happened to him at another point in his life. Well, when we think about the commandment, we have to remember this. Jesus had some things to say about murder. Here's one in verse 22 of Matthew 5. This is Matthew 5:22. It's in the Sermon on the Mount, and he has said, you've heard that it's said, thou shalt not murder, but I'm going to tell you this, and here it is. I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Whoa. When Jesus said, I'm coming to fulfill the law, we didn't expect this, did we? I'm not going to murder somebody. Not going to happen. I've lived long enough now that I'm pretty sure I can count on that. I'm not going to kill somebody. What I have to be careful about is allowing anger to seethe and to fester in my life. Who am I to allow anger toward any person to seethe and to fester? That's not all that Jesus said. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, Raka, will be answerable to the court. Do you know what Raka means? It's a term of derision, and it just means you're nothing. Jesus included that right here. Anyone who says to his brother, Raka, will be answerable. Who am I to consider myself superior to any other person? Raka. Jesus is not through. If you're reading that 22nd verse along with me, you know. And anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell. That means anyone who belittles another one or bullies another person. Who am I to belittle or to bully another person? Thou shalt not kill. We're probably not going to be guilty of murder. But how about these other things? How about letting anger seethe? How about feeling superior to others? How about belittling and bullying other people? Because, hey, Jesus included these things in the crime of murder. That's something for us to think about until next time, isn't it? Stop in for worship service a little while later.